Hello, everyone. Welcome to Future Proofing Your Blue Yonder Dispatcher 2024 Test Automation Strategies for Continuous Success. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have everyone here as well. Let's go ahead and kind of dive a little bit into the slides. So today we're going to go through a few things. We're going to do some very brief introductions. I think everyone who's going to be joining this will already know Ray. I'll say a little bit about myself, but not too much. We'll kind of take a little bit of a visit back to the Dispatcher Connect, which was very exciting to attend, and kind of talk about what Evergreen means and kind of revisit some of the concepts from that time. We'll talk a little bit about test automation strategy and methodology and how it's symbiotic with the Evergreen approach. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about test strategies, service packs, ESI, and automation, and how those things kind of all blend in together. So with that said, like I mentioned, most of you who are joining this call already know Ray, but Ray, feel free to say a few sentences as we dive in.
Yeah. Cheers, Jonathan. Jonathan says, most people will know me, but for those who don't, I'm the dispatcher PMG at Blue Yonder. I've been with the company since 2008 in various positions, always around dispatcher, and previous jobs within those companies that I've visited many customer sites, implemented many solutions with dispatcher, but now I find myself managing the product rather than deploying it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ray. Cheers. My name is Jonathan. I work at a company called Cycle Labs. In my time here, I've had the opportunity and privilege to talk to a lot of system integrators and customers who are implementing a variety of systems. And a lot of this has involved workshopping. What is the best testing approach to it? And what I've found over time is testing isn't quite rocket science, but it's also not quite basic arithmetic. It's somewhere in between. So that's something you have to be quite intentional about. I found that some patterns have emerged from these conversations around what is and isn't valuable. And I've learned that the methodology is just as important as the tooling you select, if not even more. And that's really what today's session is going to be about. It's going to be kind of chatting with Ray to get his insights on what testing methodology is best for the dispatcher space. So without further ado, let's dive in a little bit. So first, I want to give some kudos to you, Ray, as well as Ian and all the excellent folks at Blue Yonder who ran the Dispatcher Connect event. I thought it was very excellent. I really liked these 3 slides, which you kindly let us kind of insert into this deck. Actually, quick comment here. If you do have questions, there is a Q&A bubble at the bottom of the Zoom call. You can insert the questions there. We'll save them for the end just to keep time going. But at the end, we will answer those questions. And if there's some we don't get to, Ray will mention this later, but I believe some of the SIG at end of month for November, you'll save a little time to answer some of those questions, or if you even have some more. Sorry about the quick aside. So kind of diving back into these slides, giving that kudos, I really liked these slides, kind of talking about the 5 service packs coming out through this year, talking about the 9 customers already on the new dispatcher with 29 more to come next year, as well as the very exciting roadmap that you have in store for dispatcher. The biggest thing that stood out to me when you and Ian were on stage, Ray, was how you spoke about your customer-driven development methodology, how you're using user groups, the SIGs, you're talking to customers, you're researching, you're compiling data. I think one of the most exciting thing or most poignant pieces when you said from your market research, you said over 10 years, maintenance could be, what was it, 10 million? No, 1 million over 10 years.
$1 million, yeah.
Yep, for customization, maintenance, defects, testing. And I really liked how you use that to kind of drive the roadmap for dispatcher. So really like the passion and thought and planning that you're putting into it. So let's start off with a easier question, I suppose, Ray. Is dispatcher going away anytime soon?
No, absolutely not. I think when Blue Yonder started communicating out its new strategy, supply chain for the world, and our CEO, Duncan Angove, was saying about SaaS and all of this cognitive execution and supply chain. There was a lot that underpinned all of that strategy. And dispatcher is certainly one of those elements that underpin the whole strategy, where we have on-prem customers that might at some point in the future want to migrate to a more SaaS-based supply chain solution for them. And we're giving those customers that are on-prem dispatcher that opportunity to take those incremental steps towards that that end game. So dispatcher's part of the strategy, and we're building out lots of new feature functions and offering services that's going to allow customers to build that cognitive execution, use Blue Yonder microservices. And then at the point in which it suits them, if it doesn't suit them, that's fine. If it suits them, then obviously they can migrate to a fully SaaS solution. But it's certainly going to be around for a hell of a long time, I'd have thought, for sure.
I like it. A hell of a long time.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned kind of these incremental steps, and I left the roadmap on screen here to kind of highlight steps that you're kind of taking forward, looking to the future. I've heard you say the word evergreen here and there. I've heard Ian mention it as well. What does evergreen mean to you in the context of Dispatcher?
Well, as we move away from that standalone solution for a particular customer, it may well be standard software, it may be customized software, but moving away from that sort of island mentality, silo mentality, it means that the strategy we've deployed means that the customer can take these incremental service packs, and to all intents and purposes, Jonathan, they're like mini upgrades every quarter or every time we release one. Yeah. And the term evergreen isn't a new term. We're using it to make sure that the customers understand that they can maintain their systems up to the present time and date with regards to the latest feature functions and stay within their standard support agreements and things. So it's kind of you've got a support model, but you never really go out of standard support because you're always running the latest software. And with service packs, the service pack model, it just allows them to achieve that.
Gotcha. So thank you for defining evergreen and what it means to you. So I think the question on my mind is, and I'll kind of ask it in two layers, is why should a customer stay evergreen? And then I'll kind of fold that into if a new service pack comes out, let's say Q1 2025, extended ESI comes out in that next service pack. What should they upgrade immediately? Should it be the moment it comes out, they upgrade the next day? What if that particular feature isn't relevant to them? What if they don't need extended ESI? Should they still upgrade? What do you think? What are your recommendations here and why?
Well, we always give this some thought when we were on the sort of verge of implementing that concept for the latest version of Dispatcher, because it's a complete departure from that sort of single point fixed concept to a multiple point fix slash new feature function strategy. So every customer has different needs, okay, when it comes to these service packs. And what we know with our customers, they have lots of different instances of their environments. They might have a dev, they might have a test, they might have a pre-prod. But they take these service packs and they migrate them and test them as they go along through these environments. And we have no real recommendation with regards to how quickly that you should fast track a service pack to production. But what we say is that if you're raising an issue in production and that issue potentially is being fixed in a service pack or will be fixed in a service pack that we're about to release, that to be able to get the fix that you need, you would need to deploy all of the previous service packs, right, Jonathan? Yeah, in the correct sequence. You can't hop, for example, from service pack 1 to service pack 3. It just doesn't work like that. So as we slow down in the release of our service packs from certainly 2023 and early part of 2024, um, we're increasing the time that you're going to have to put those service packs into production. But there's no hard and fast rule. The only thing where, and I think we might touch on it in a bit, Jonathan, is if we're delivering a hotfix to a customer, we'll always build that hotfix on the latest version of Dispatcher. And that latest version of the Dispatcher clearly is the includes the last service pack we released. So to get that hotfix and to deploy it successfully, you would need to be up to date with the last service pack. But there's no hard and fast rule to say that you have to have them all in and within days or weeks. You go at your pace, and you deploy them in the correct sequence, and eventually, obviously, you'll stay that evergreen.
Gotcha. And I think kind of listening to what you're saying here, we kind of spoke about the customer driven development sort of philosophy that you take for Dispatcher. So I think even if a given service pack or, as you mentioned, upcoming hot fixes aren't necessarily relevant to a given customer,
Yep.
there will be one that will be relevant to them because you speak to so many people in the community and try to make sure the roadmap is valuable for them. So I think kind of what you're saying is it's in your best interest to try to stay evergreen. There's no real deadline or demand that you must adhere to, but if you want to be ready for that next and new exciting thing that may be relevant to you, staying up to date is in your best interest rather than doing a big upgrade all at once, kind of taking little stair steps in a structured manner that you can schedule, put on the calendar. Does that sound right, Ray?
Absolutely, Jonathan. That's exactly what we're saying.
Gotcha. Okay. Fantastic. So let me go ahead and let's head to the next slide here. So before we kind of dive into a little bit of the how the symbiosis of evergreen and test automation and how test automation can kind of help you stay up to date, I want to take a little bit of time and kind of differentiate between the two types of testing.
Mhm.
So this is a little bit of a busy slide, so forgive me here, but um, there is the development life cycle. This is happening at Blue Yonder on Ray's teams and alongside his peers. There's the deployment life cycle. That's what happens when Blue Yonder, a system integrator, or yourselves are implementing the system. So prior to it being deployed, it is thoroughly tested. There's thorough automated testing in place for fixes and new features. And this is in its vanilla state. So what we're kind of talking about a little bit more on this call is a testing strategy for deployment, not development where it's already structured, thorough, and automated. We're talking about deployment. Part of where Dispatcher and similar solutions kind of excel is in how configurable they are. There's many configurations, and that's what makes it powerful because you can tailor it to your own business process flow. So that also means there's infinite permutations of any given Dispatcher implementation. So from a development testing philosophy, it's not really scalable or conceivable to test every single permutation, especially since many might not ever see the light of day. But that said, customers do have their own permutation of it. They have it configured to their own business processes. So that's kind of what we're talking about a little today is the deployment testing methodology. When you're configuring your dispatcher, when you have your unique permutation, what can you do to test that? What can you do when you take on a service pack and you have your own unique set of configurations? How can you make sure that that service pack can be taken in so that you can move to the next one or to the next hot fix that has the valuable things you're looking about? So today, from the cycle side, we have pre-built packages of test libraries that are oriented towards that. But Ray, I want to throw it back towards you here and kind of ask you a little bit about before dispatch is configured, before it's deployed to a customer and configured as part of that. What is Blue Yonder testing before that in this sort of development life cycle?
Yeah, so we've got a hybrid of automation and manual testing strategies that go through multiple systems at the same time until we sign off that new feature or fix ready for release. So we kind of, the first phase is usually automation, and that's done by our teams out in India. And then once the automation, they don't automate test everything, but there are some automation fixes and new features that we do test, and then they'll be handed down through the systems. And then finally, I think when it gets to the last, there's some manual testing going on. So again, that's that hybrid. So I think what we've done is sort of really focused on quality rather than quantity, and I think that was a driver, Jonathan, from our customer base when it come to this new service pack model. So it was, yes, you're going to give us a service pack, that's fine, but how can we be confident of the quality of what you guys are sending out? I think you touched on the point earlier on that a service pack might include something that I need and want, but it might include nothing that I need and want, yet I have to take it. Yeah. So quality it was absolutely key. So yeah, so we have that hybrid automated and manual testing strategy. And yeah, we're focusing on quality rather than quantity at this point in time.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, the way I like to think about it, perhaps it's a bit crude or childish, is kind of like a little bit like if any of you have watched The Walking Dead or similar shows, maybe if you are in a zombie apocalypse and you are basing your strategy, you have a home base and you have the tertiary areas outside of your home base, and you need to determine, where can I safely go scout? Where can I go find things? When I think about the development life cycle and the deployment life cycle and the testing approach, aka looking for zombies, making sure that the people within your community are safe, I think part of what Ray is sharing here is, what is the testing that is occurring in the home base? What do you know is definitively safe? What can you feel confident in is well structured? The areas that are less certain, I think, are outside of your home base, where it comes to the deployment life cycle, where you're looking for areas where you need to scavenge or where you want to expand things. And I think at that point, figuring out the methodology of what's the right blend of automated and manual testing, what am I testing, which houses am I going into to look for things and why, which places am I setting up barriers or traps or alarms. And a lot of that requires manpower, just like automation, to set up. So figuring out the correct balance of effort to reward is crucial to making sure what you test is important. But understanding the difference between the home base, the external areas that you're exploring, as well as areas that you may not ever revisit, may not warrant automation or investment into traps and walls and things, is important, because otherwise you might have wasted manpower and you might be placing your resources at risk.
Yeah.
So go ahead,
Sorry,
Ray.
John. I was about to say, yeah, it's a great point. It's something that certainly we thought of this side, that obviously not all test cases are equal. Yeah. Some fixes and feature and functions we add in are extremely challenging, due to some complexities in the UI front end. So, as an example, parcel packing in Dispatcher, yeah, it's a complex screen, goes through many different stages from end to end, and I mean, you might choose to automate that, but if you was to say it's a like for like, inventory summary is another screen versus parcel packing. Would I choose to build a test library for both? Well, they're similar in what they kind of do, but it might mean that the cases by case basis, that the effort is disproportionate into each individual screen in Dispatcher, and that's what we try to do. Really, it's more practical to opt for manual testing, because it's going to take me longer to build a library for this screen than actually, it's going to take me to test. And such things like ESI as an example in clustering, where we're using sort of dynamic data, I might think that I want to create a test case, a library for ESI. But you know what? Manual clustering is easy. I don't need to win. So it's on a case by case basis, I think, is uh, you pointed out. But I think what my belief is that if you cannot 100% test by automation a screen or a bit of functionality or fix, then it shouldn't be automated tested at all, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like that pragmatic approach to it. I think kind of like we were referencing an earlier comment of testing strategy, picking what you
Yeah.
want to test. It's not rocket science. It's also not basic arithmetic. It's somewhere in between. And you just talking about these processes and going, this is why you might want to automate this one. This is why clustering might be more manual in
Yeah.
terms of level of effort and ROI for investment. And I think making those judgment calls is important. Otherwise, you might have a lot of waste with respect to what you build. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, I do want to circle back to an earlier point because I know you mentioned hot fixes, and I know there was something that was meaningful here. So I see on kind of the roadmap here, you have kind of a list of service packs. Can you share a little bit more about how hot fixes might kind of blend into this, right?
Yeah. So hotfix isn't a new concept for dispatcher customers. Most or all of them will maybe have experienced that interaction with Blue Yonder, JDA, Red Prairie, going back many years around a hotfix for their particular system where they found an issue with part of the software, and we've given that single point fix, yeah, and we've delivered it in a hotfix. So the concept isn't new, but there's obviously the concept of hotfixes now means that when we give a hotfix to a customer, then that hotfix isn't specific to that customer. It will be developed in standard, given as a hotfix to a customer, and then that hotfix obviously is then part of the next available service pack. So effectively, when you patch in that service pack, it already has your hotfix in. It overrides the hotfix to a certain extent. And normally, and our customers will know, hotfixes are only ever given out if we're talking about showstoppers, right, Jonathan? Yeah. I need to move forward. I need to move forward quickly. It's holding up my production system. Therefore, we'll deliver a hotfix. And I think we're sticking to that in the main since we introduced the service pack model.
Gotcha. Okay. So that means similar to what you said about hopping service packs, you also won't be able to hop hot fixes.
Yeah,
You'll want to stay up to date such that you can take on the latest hot fix, whether it's a performance update, which will be relevant to everyone, or a security update, which will also be relevant to everyone.
yeah,
So another reason to stay up to date. And also, I
correct.
imagine from a development efficiency standpoint, it also empowers your team to be able to focus and consolidate development capacity to keep developing valuable features and moving forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. So we had kind of one of the things we kind of dove into on this slide was a little bit about kind of picking which process warrants automation, which process warrants manual testing. We had spoken a little bit about how staying up to date is in your best interest with the customer-driven development philosophy and keeping up to date so you can take on new features and also these new hot fixes. So maybe we can talk a little bit about um, applying these practical release management principles to some of these service packs. So looking at the screen, if using general rules, given any service pack on the screen, what should be automated, what should be manual, and why? And I know we've talked a little bit about effort to automate, but are there any other rules or principles that come to your mind when you think about this?
Um, I think what we're going to be looking to implement, Jonathan, is in I think the next service pack is a new section in the release notes when it comes to some testing strategies around how to test some of the fixes, some of the new features that we put in. And we'll use ESI as a good example because that's the next big feature coming in. So in the release notes where we put the ESI in, I'm looking in the release notes to put in some sort of test strategy. Yeah, this is what we've done. This is what you might like to do. So that's going to be a new section within the release notes. So that's something to look out for. But from a testing strategy, I think we've touched on it around that, just a balanced approach that combines both automated and manual testing obviously can clearly optimize any testing strategy to approve that software quality, right? And it is down to a screen by screen basis. Yeah. So if we're talking about the new UI, Jonathan, clearly that's where most of the functional testing will be done. And I know our partners and yourselves have an extensive libraries around that new front end, but equally, it should also incorporate how the RDT conversation and all of that stuff interacts with the system now. Yeah. But again, we take a balanced approach around what we automate and what we manual test based on the screen complexity, based on what we fixed, based on what other screens might come into play when we're testing. So it's just those touch points that build up a picture, Jonathan, around should this be automated or should it be manual? Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
definitely something we're gonna try and implement in release notes when it comes to delivering fixes for complex screens in the next GA release.
Yeah, listening to you speak, it sounds like some of the general rules are process complexity. How much of it, if it's a complex process, perhaps that does warrant some automation. If it's something simpler, that would be really fast to manually test, perhaps that warrants manual testing. And also the degree of change, like if it's just an additional field, perhaps that doesn't warrant its own entire test. But if it fundamentally changes how the process flows, then definitely. And I also heard you allude to kind of how the UI is newer, but the RDT is stable and has been for a significant period of time. So
Absolutely.
leaning a weight towards UI testing is probably best in terms of risk mitigation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you
I
have
mean,
any thoughts? Oh, go ahead.
no, carry on, Jonathan.
Do you have any thoughts on if there are going to be kind of two types of change sets coming? You mentioned right now there's service packs, but one day in the future there'll also be hot fixes. Do you think there's any sort of rationale for how they should test each of these in general? Should they test everything for a hot fix or for a service pack, or only test a subset? What do you think is best?
Okay, so one of the things that we talked to some customers around when we introduced this concept was that you're going to get fixes for bits of functionality that you have enabled but you don't use, or you haven't enabled. Yeah. They don't form part of your business solution, but you're going to get the fix anyway. So it was a case where we said, because we've done that sort of hybrid automated manual testing, and it's gone through 3 or 4 different layers to make sure that the quality is as good as it absolutely can be. We're not saying that you have to test everything that we deliver in a service pack. Yeah. That's something we're not saying, but what we're saying is by all means you go and test the things that stick out for you. So you make that judgment call. What's in the service pack? Let me look at the release notes. Does this fix impact anything that I'm doing in my solution right now? Yeah. And how do I build that test up to test it against my configuration? Because clearly we can't test a fix or a new feature against everybody's different configurations. Yeah. We test the core code and then we push it through. It's definitely something that I would recommend. Obviously, test what's applicable to you. by all means, if you want to test everything in the service pack, I mean, that's great. But I appreciate, obviously, it might not be something that you want to start to do, but it's certainly test what is applicable to you and absolutely test it with your configuration. And if that means that it's like a repetitive test case for regression testing, Jonathan, yeah, that typically I want to test it with this function access turned on and off and blah blah blah. You can build out those libraries and just test the elements that are going to be applicable for you. But clearly, deploying a whole service pack and testing only some of the elements carries risk, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Got it. So it's about kind of finding that balance. And you mentioned
yeah,
something exciting earlier, which is the release notes will include some recommendations on test strategy. Obviously, with yourself so deep in it, you'll be able to kind of perceive what changes will be rolling out in each change set and hot fixes and service packs and say, and also you'll be speaking to customers and you'll know where configurations are averaging. So you'll be able to provide some commentary where you can say, I would recommend you test in this area because I know this is a heavily configured area and this we've changed some things there. So I think that's a really exciting sort of feedback loop to kind of establish between yourself and the customer base. Um,
yeah,
and as the
absolutely.
oh, go ahead.
So no, that's absolutely correct, Jonathan. That's what the aim is to do, to give that guidance around some of the key bits that we're going to be putting into service packs. And as time goes by, you'll probably see that the quantity within a service pack starts to decrease, but there will be more feature functions being added over 2025 and 2026 with more customers upgrading. So I think it's fair to say that there's going to be a lot of testing with your own functionality, with your own configuration, um, for new feature functions coming on that they want to leverage, right? Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's a new feature function to me. I knew it was coming because Ray told me in our last SIG call, blah, blah, blah. I think I can leverage some of that for my business. And when I get it, I'm going to enable it and I'm going to run some tests. Yep. So I think that's where we'll see a swing to more testing feature functions, and the fixes will be, will kind of drop off at some point next year, I think.
Okay. When that's good to hear. When with regards to the additional commentary and the release notes, when do you think that will be something that people can look forward to having it available?
I think it definitely will be a section in the last of the service packs for 2024. Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Um, I,
Very exciting.
it will definitely be a feature in the release notes, certainly for 2025 going forward.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love that you're doing that. Um, when I think about those customers, I think it was 29 slotted for upgrade next year. Um, Perhaps as they're upgrading and then trying to stay evergreen, they look at these notes, but they still have some apprehension or a little worry, or maybe their configurations are outside of the average norm. What do you think of them reaching out to Blue Yonder? Could they reach out to someone to get more tailored advice for testing and where they should target their efforts? Because you mentioned it's a bit of a balance, and maybe figuring out where that balance is something that some folks would like some assistance on. What do you think of that sort of communication dynamic?
Yeah. Well, is with probably most of our customers know by now that Blue Yonder's always here. Yeah, for our dispatcher customers. We're only a fairly small team in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Blue Yonder, and their product suite. But we're always here to help, and we'll try and give as much quality information in that new section that I mentioned, Jonathan, in the release notes. But of course, we're always open to have a discussion around what testing is recommended when it comes to any new features that we're going to release. ESI and we'll probably talk about that in the last half of this chat, is going to be such a thing, Jonathan, that we're going to get customers saying, how do I test this best? Yeah. And a lot of things that are coming out around the anticipated ESI release is, how do I volume test this? Yeah. Um, so we're going to be putting something out there that, whether that's in the release notes or something extra, because I think this ESI stuff is going to be the biggest thing that's been introduced to Dispatcher since 2011, 2012, when we introduced RDT data rules. Okay, so this is going to open up a whole new doors for our on-prem Dispatcher customers, but equally, it introduces the risk if I implement it and I don't test it, in the way I implement it, it might give me problems. So what's the best strategy for testing this so I make sure when I implement it, I'm going to get the most out of it, right? And it's not going to give me any issues. So we're conscious of the fact that this functionality is going to be sort of released pretty soon, and we're kind of working internally here to make sure all of our documentation is up to date, all of our recommendations that are going to go with it. But like I said, Jonathan, we're always here and we're always willing to talk.
Love it. So talking about ESI, and maybe I now pop forward 2 slides here. Perhaps we dive into that a little bit, and I know I already have some thoughts on screen here, but from a test automation strategy, what do you think it should entail? We know we're going to get some thoughts from you later in the notes, but what are some thoughts? Maybe we can get a sneak peek into kind of your rationale for how anyone implementing ESI should approach testing for it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a version of ESI already in production, with one of our microservices. So we know that version is working okay. It's working at a fair capacity when it comes to performance. But we've talked to a few customers recently around what they potentially would implement ESI for, and clearly that implementation means that the volume of traffic and noise through ESI would be greatly increased. Okay, so we understand that, and we had an internal meeting just last week to talk to some stakeholders within Blue Yonder that are close to the ESI and say, hey, look, when we've completed the development of the core part of ESI that we're going to implement in Q1 next year, what would be our testing strategy that we could share with the customers to give them assurances that we've tested it to a level which would be beyond what it would be used for. So we kind of come up with the idea that obviously the web service calls that is a feature of obviously is for RVSI, and we'll throw that slide there. Yeah. So we've gone through 3 iterations, but each iteration has the same payload in respect of the size. So you can see that one call would be 1,000 orders and total 10,000 order lines as an example. And then see what processing time that takes to process that one call with that size of payload. And then we move on to the blue one where we have 1,000 calls, each with one order, and each order has 100 lines. So we're talking like 1,000 one order calls, each with 100 lines. Again, gives that 10,000 order lines. And finally, we've got the 10,000 calls. So this is something that we're looking to do, certainly towards the end of this year, to test that ESI web service. And the reason we chose order headers and lines is because if somebody implements ESI to hook up with an automation, typically automation passes data backwards and forwards about tasks in Dispatcher, and move tasks, and all of our Dispatcher customers will know this. I don't need much data to move a move task from the next stage onto the next logical stage in Dispatcher. I can do it with actually one field. if I really needed to. Okay, so testing that movement of this move tasks we felt was not the best strategy going forward. And what could we use? And we chose orders because order header and lines can hold up to 200 to 300 different elements within a payload just for one order and one order line. So if we can test an order header and line coming in that capacity, we're pretty confident that we can also that will exceed the capacity of a test for move tasks as an example. Then we talk things about testing WCS, about carrier solutions and things, and the payloads backwards and forwards of them aren't particularly big. The same as we've already got a B1 microservice, OMS hooked up to an on-prem dispatcher, and that's working perfectly okay with the volumes that OMS are sending. So that would be our test strategy, and I think that's what we're going to test in the first instance for ESI when we've finished developing.
Gotcha. And these are for BY to BY system integrations, right? Gotcha.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And part of this, of course, is once the development testing is completed, using sort of this methodology is
Mhm.
likely a good amount of folks will be integrating to other systems that may or may not be Blue Yonder. Do you
Correct.
think that this same approach should apply to if they're, integrating with an Oracle system and or something? Do you think they should
Yeah.
mimic the approach?
Yeah. The slight complexity, Jonathan, that comes if I'm integrating with a nerd system, let's say SAP, yeah, and I start to introduce some data manipulation and translation as regards the web service calls, yeah, because ESI can do that, yeah, it can talk different languages for different systems, so it does that data um, conversion and things. So that again, that would be an additional test on top. This test is clearly Blue Yonder to Blue Yonder, yeah, and because we kind of talk the same language, those payloads wouldn't involve any conversions as such, yeah. Once we move to implement Dispatcher on-prem with Blue Yonder Data Cloud, yes, that's when we would probably see some data conversion because the data cloud is different to a direct dispatcher to RMS. That mapping would be done either end, yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something that is on our minds, and it's definitely something that a customer, if they're implementing ESI to an external service, um, like an ERP, for example, then yeah, it's definitely worth additional testing for that data conversion.
Gotcha. So you see sort of the functional testing of the integration point to make sure the data conversion is behaving as it should with each accumulative service pack and or hotfix. Do you still see the need to also performance test using the same methodology kind of shown on screen here as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
I forgot to mention, Jonathan, we're probably going to use Cycle Labs for this, these performance tests. Um, but back to your point, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we recommend. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. And I think some of the things you were sharing with me earlier, Ray, was kind of figuring out kind of based on what you shared, what external service are you integrating with? If it's from Blue Yonder, then you'll know that this has already been done from a Blue Yonder to Blue Yonder system. If it's another vendor like SAP, then you do need to add in functional testing and mimic
Yep.
Blue Yonder's recommendation for performance testing. And there might even be more metrics you want to hit beyond processing time
Yep.
that might be worth looking at based on historical data. But this is an excellent foundation. And then figuring out if it warrants automation or if perhaps if it's one integration point with very little throughput, because I know you mentioned the throughput is meaningful. If it's a low traffic system, maybe you don't need performance testing. You just need to make sure it's converting the data right. But if it's very high traffic, you might need to lean on performance immensely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So let's see here. I'm going to my notes real quick. So beyond that, I think we have about 15 or so minutes left, which is I think what we wanted to kind of tidy up for Q&A. But as kind of a brief overview of the session, maybe we kind of rewind back in time and kind of talk about what we talked about. And Ray, feel free to throw things in. One, we talked a little bit about the service pack and hotfix methodology that Blue Yonder is taking. How hotfixes and service packs will become independent, but hotfixes will be embroiled into cumulative service packs. And you can't hop. You need to go one by one. And the team will do their best to make sure each service pack and hotfix is relevant to as many people and as impactful as possible. And so kind of stair stepping through that is crucial. We spoke a little bit about the difference between development testing and deployment testing. And I think the ESI kind of topic we dove into was a great example of that. Blue Yonder is going to test the Blue Yonder to Blue Yonder integrations. What about the other external systems for deployment testing? What do you need to do there? We talked a little bit about release notes and how you're going to add commentary in there to kind of recommend this is what we've tested. This is where there's going to be rooms to explore, where there might be zombies that you need to go find. So, Ray, is there any other highlights or things you want to bring Royal up?
Yeah, we've been talking to Cycle Labs for a couple of years or so now. Right back when we implemented this strategy with service packs and modular software for later versions of Dispatcher, and clearly it was obvious that whilst Cycle Labs could be used for testing service packs, it was going to always be so much more for us that we could use it for performance testing. We could also use it as a training aid, as an example. Yeah. It can be used for like continuous improvement. And I know a lot of our customers run continuous improvement throughout their solutions. And if you change configuration midway through your life cycle of a solution for a particular client, you might want to you might want to test the consequences of that change. Yeah. And this is where automation testing can come in, and we've understood all of this. And what does our strategy mean for customers when it comes to using automated test tools like Cycle? But it definitely is more than just automated testing for sure. Like when we release new features, as an example, and you want to leverage them, but you have to test them within conjunction with your existing data config. I mean, that's always recommended. So it wears many hats, Jonathan. Yeah. It's not just there just to test core code. So that's my view on cycle automated testing, is you can use it for so much more. And the thing is, that why should you use automated testing? Well, I guess you want to sort of minimize human error. Yeah. You want to, I guess, improve reliability, increase efficiency. I don't know, increase the scope of testing maybe. The library is repeatable. I know, so the list is endless. And one thing that I know that it was a bugbear of mine is obviously if you've got a test library that you can deploy and repeat, you don't need the test documentation, which was always hard to update and keep current. So all of these things I've just mentioned is certainly a benefit from running automation software like Cycle for sure. But yeah, I mean, we're looking at, and we even think about what type of tests should we consider for automation. Is it a unit test or a functional test, a regression test, just some smoke testing? Is it data driven? Is it performance? What type of test am I trying to do? And is automated testing the way forward for that? Yeah. So a lot of our customers will all be thinking about these things that I've just spoken about in the last 5 minutes about one, do I deploy automation testing? And two, how do I use it? How do I leverage it? How do I get most out of it? Yeah. Um, so yeah, testing service packs and hot fixes, um, it's going to have a big impact on our customers because like I said before, they're moving away from singular point fixes in bespoke software to like that multiple point fix in standard software concepts. So it's absolutely a joint responsibility for everybody to make sure that what we're testing is the best it can absolutely be. And yeah, we don't get any on issues as we move those service packs through our environment. And we have the same issue as you guys, our customers. If we don't test it correctly in our low environments and we pass that up, we have a problem.
Thank you, Ray. I suppose that does lead me to one final question. As you kind of spoke about the value of test automation, there's something to be said. There's an argument out there in terms of it might be easier and perhaps even more traditional to just take the change set, to just take the service pack and have a team on standby to address any issues that kind of pop up as they arise, or take the hot fix, do that. And that's a little more reactive, but it also is different for budget, scheduling, and planning sort of cycles. What do you think of that approach, in that reactive approach versus proactive approach, and why?
Um, I guess you can, if I've understood you correctly, Jonathan. I mean, to be proactive, I guess you'd need to know what's coming before you get it. Okay.
Yeah.
There's I guess one challenge that we have with I can tell you about the new feature, yeah. So because that's on our roadmap, and but with regards to fixes, I can't tell you what's coming until a certain point in time, Jonathan. Yeah, and that's normally a couple of days before we actually release because at that point we're not 100% sure what's going to make it in and what isn't, because obviously our testing strategy means we're trying to eke the most out of the time we've got between service packs. So you can start to plan before we release the service packs, but I think what's going to help with being proactive, Jonathan, is we're moving, I think, making the transition in I think in one service or two service pack time to just kind of tidying up all of the issues that we've got remaining with the new UI. And what we're doing, we're moving to screen stabilization rather than single point fixes for customers. That screen stabilization, we'll know what screens we're targeting up front. So when you talk about being proactive, if we said, yeah, we're going to be stabilizing address, or we're going to be stabilizing parcel packing, or we're going to be stabilizing cluster configuration, as an example, we can say that right up front. Yeah. And then being proactive and saying, okay, what test libraries have I got for cluster configuration? What test libraries have I got for parcel packing? Yeah. So kind of planning ahead, knowing what's going to come. And I think planning ahead and knowing what's going to come will be easier if we move to that screen stabilization rather than single point fixes.
Gotcha. Okay. We have a question in from the audience. What automated testing tools is Blue Yonder using today? Given so many different common permutations of functional flows, how do you decide the testing priority internally? And thank you for your
Um,
answer, Ray.
yeah, so we've got, I think there's a two or three different tools we use. Cycle's one of them. We use for dispatcher, I think two different types of Cycle of automated testing software. Cycle being one of them, and that's a recent introduction. And hopefully we make that full migration across to solely using Cycle as our preferred automated test software. But yeah, I think to answer the question, Jonathan, just going back to our strategy that we've said that we take automated testing on a case-by-case basis. We have to have that balanced view on is it disproportionate to the effort to build a library or to automate test it against what we're actually fixing. So we'll make that call internally, and whether to just carry on manually testing it throughout the stages of that test cycle, or we deploy some sort of automated testing. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it does in a way, but feel free to throw in a follow-up for anyone who threw that question in. It ultimately sounds like a conversation, and communication is what needs to happen. And that helps dictate priority, because each service pack you're building, each set of features and enhancements you're doing is unique. And so kind of brute forcing a generic strategy in a generic scope of testing doesn't necessarily add value. So I think the discussion is where it kind of thrives.
Yeah, I think the effort goes up or down, and depending what's in the service pack, Jonathan. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the attendees? Okay. So I've been thinking about what we've been talking about, right? And I'll try and boil it down into three bullets, and then see if you agree with them or want to adjust. So one, take some time and think about your test strategy as you look towards being evergreen. Use the roadmap that Ray has kindly published, the release notes with these new upcoming testing recommendations, and if you would like to, establish a dialogue with your Blue Yonder reps to refine your approach so that you go in with intentionality and know what you're going to test. And you have the support and attention of the team to help you pick something that's meaningful. I'd say that's number one. I see you nodding, so I'll keep going. Number two, plan to stay evergreen, so you can iteratively move forward. There will be new features, enhancements, security, and performance updates, and these are going to come out on a consistent basis, and they will be driven by customer-driven development. So some of them will be valuable to you, if not all. And if you take them in a consistent basis, it'll be easier to take the one that is valuable to you, which will let you be more flexible. And if you do it in a way, because the release schedule has been fairly consistent from what you've shared with me, Ray, it is, you take things in dev, you move it to test, you move it to prod, and you do that on a consistent basis with the roadmap as shown. And then you can kind of take these things on in a very structured, planned manner. I'd say that's number two. Okay.
Great.
And then number three, kind of rehashing a little what Ray's answered for the question here, is be pragmatic about what you test. It's not everything and it's not nothing. It's somewhere in between, and it's not a hand wave. It's not, let's just test this. It's something that you have someone sit and they look at their screen and they think about it and they go, this is what's coming in, and this is what's going to be valuable to automate. This is what's going to be valuable to manually test. And these are areas we are comfortable not testing. We're okay with that risk based on the effort we have available. And so intentionality is super important. Ray, feel free to add or clarify.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. Those are great points. And we're always constantly thinking here at Blue Yonder about how can we make it easier for our customers to migrate those service packs to their environments. And there was something that I was thinking of recently that will contribute to that when we talked about security and performance fixes. So I think what we're going to be doing is what we've done in the past. If we've got any security and performance fixes, we've just released them as part of a service pack. Now, I absolutely appreciate the fact that a security or performance fix would need to migrate through environments at a quicker pace than a fix for a screen. Yeah. So I think what we're going to be moving towards, certainly Q1 next year, is any security and performance fixes we're probably going to put out in a separate hotfix that's available to everybody, or a service pack on its own, which allows you to fast track those. They're not weighted down by everything else. Yeah. So I think that's something important to remember, that we're trying to help the customers get to those points where they can use those service packs to get stuff into production quicker.
Love it. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Ray. Really appreciate your time here. So with 1 minute left, just a few things. For anyone who attended today, we'll send the recording out to you. If you think of questions between now, oh, we got another cue. Let's see it. Here, well, we're on the clock, so perhaps we save that one. I'll paste it to you, Ray, nonetheless. But
Yeah,
if you have questions you think between now and the end of month user group /SIG, just feel free. I think Ray will set aside a little time for that as well. That said,
absolutely.
thank you for your time. I'll take note of this question and perhaps we'll just reach out to you directly just for the sake of time. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ray.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for attending.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Bye.
bye.